you have to have grit, like staying power, right? And like the definition of grit is like, no matter how hard things get, you're willing to stick it to the end. I'm literally door knocking, like -40 outside. It doesn't matter what the weather is. There was a grind in doing that. I'm a big believer that if you like write things down or you say it enough times, you can will things into fruition. And I actually wrote, I want to be a general manager of a dealership. It's a people business. We're in the business of people. And people is not just the customers that are coming in your door, it's the people that work for you. If you hold such a high standard for yourself, you have to be careful that when you try to hold other people to the same level of standard, it takes time to get them to that standard. There's a saying, you're either moving forwards or backwards. You're never standing still. It's okay. I've did it before. I know I was good at selling. I have nothing to be afraid of. Let's give it a shot.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the Tool for Rise podcast, aka the #1 podcast in Winnipeg, where we document the rise and stardom of Winnipeg's talent and personalities. If you want to be a better salesperson or you want to be a better leader, this episode is for you. Because today we sit down with Sunny Khullar, the GM of St. James Volkswagen. We all talk about the mindset, what it takes to be a leader, how to work with employees, how to onboard employees so you have the same vision going forward in your company or your establishment. And we dive into so much more about the mindset behind it. Again, turns out that 83.4% of people listening to this episode are not subscribed. So if you gain any value from this podcast, especially this one, please hit that subscribe button and I will see you next week. Enjoy the episode.
We have some history. We did a holiday video,
Yes.
which I think a lot of our viewers saw, and you were a part of that. And I told you this off camera again. Thank you so much for letting us use your space. It was a beautiful time.
Yeah.
I hope you enjoyed the aspect. You were in the video as well. We get a little snippet of you in there.
Yeah.
So thank you for letting us do that. First of all, at St. James, we owe you a lot of credit. That I told you that was one of our dreams that we always wanted to do. And
I think it was a great collaboration between the both of us. Our team was excited to be part of it because there's nothing better than giving back to our community. Many of our customers, they're local customers, right? And when they see the opportunity for a business to be able to participate in giving back, because they're, in the end of the day, is what drives our business, right? So we have to, we owe it to them, right? To be able to participate in something like that. So the Christmas give back to the schools, to the children, just to see, how happy they were. It's like the simplest things in life, right? We're talking about toys that we take for granted, right? But they don't even have, right? And just to see them smile, it's like it brings you back to humble beginnings, right? And back to the roots of, that's what happiness is about. So
beautiful. And it was amazing. Like I remember my favorite part of that video is when, I don't know if it made the cut, but we gave this little kid a soccer ball. And it's just like a soccer ball from Walmart. And then he comes back just bawling
his tears. Yeah.
I was like, man, I just gave you a soccer ball. It's not that crazy, but
yeah.
And then someone said to me, that's probably the nicest thing they got in the whole year, right? So I'm glad that you were able to be part of it. And to start this conversation, man, I know we mentioned that I at least want to take this, when we were talking with Robin, I want to take into the leadership side of things. So I'll start with my first question. What does leadership mean to you?
Yeah, so that's obviously a very open-ended question. It's a very loaded question.
Welcome to a podcast.
We could be here for days and weeks. There's probably thousands of books written on leadership, right? Leadership, it's like I said, it's a broad topic. I think the biggest thing for me is your ability to serve those around you that you can help elevate them to maybe a state of being that they didn't think was possible, right? Everyone has, minimum standards. But to be able to elevate someone's minimum standards past a ceiling that they didn't think was possible, I think that's what a good leader does. They see the potential of people around them. They're okay that even if those people can grow past them as a person, to achieve the common goal of what, let's say, St. James Volkswagen, which is to sell as many cars as possible in Manitoba, right? I don't have to be the best salesperson. I don't have to be the best closer, right? But if I can help other people achieve those states of being the best closer or selling the most cars, that's what brings more happiness to me, right? So that elevation of those around you, I think is a huge core competency of leadership.
And you've been in this leadership role for a little bit and a lot of it as well. How does your journey start in the world of entrepreneurship, business, leadership? Where does it start for you?
Yeah, it's funny actually, because when I was in high school, I was a huge science guy. Like I just, I was doing really well in sciences. I thought I was going to be either a doctor or a dentist, right? I was like, I'll do some sort of that field. I do first year of university. There's this college pro, it's painting. Okay. And I didn't have a job ever. This is, I'm thinking thinking like maybe it's a good opportunity to get some sort of job experience while I'm in school. And so College Pro approached. I decided, you know what, let me try it and apply. I ended up getting the opportunity. And that's where I got exposure to like business, because you're running your own franchise business, right? While you're in school. And it was a lot of work to run a franchise, because I had 5 courses. I'm doing a full course load in sciences.
Yeah.
But I think that was like a blessing in disguise, because what that allowed me to see was like how much I actually loved business, right? My dad's always been in business his whole life. So I got to see like what that is, right? And so that probably helped connect some of the dots, because I could have relatable conversations when I came home after running the business, right? And funny enough, I didn't actually like sciences in the first year of university. So I ended up steering away from sciences with having a conversation with my dad. I thought it was going to be a tough conversation, because this whole time they're saying, you know, Sunny's going to be a doctor or a dentist, right? And it's like now he wants to go into business and change a full 180 of his career path, right? But I think he saw how passionate I was with running a business, and he saw that I was doing really well at closing deals, right? We're closing painting deals. I'm literally door knocking like in different neighborhoods for the business to paint their house, right? So there was a grind in doing that, and having other people recruited to help knock doors with me, minus 40 outside. It doesn't matter what the weather is, but I have to build my book of business for the summertime, right? But when I closed a deal, you can't replace that enthusiasm and excitement and fulfillment. And I think that's what got me through the minus 40s, right? Is like, let me just close a deal and it'll make it all worth it, right? Like I'll feel warm inside to overcome the actual external minus 40, right?
Do you remember your first close? Like, what was that feeling like?
There's a rush, right? Like you get this rush, and it's like, man, like someone believed in me. They believed in a student running a business and trusting me to paint their house, right? Like a house is the biggest purchase someone makes in life, other than the car is the second biggest thing, but the house is the biggest thing, right? So it's like, you know, if they're going to trust me with their house to paint, like that's a big deal, right? So it's like they believed in my value that I can present to them, and they bought into the vision of what we can do to their house. And so when you like connect those dots, it's an accomplishment.
Do you remember like what the pitch was? So you're going to like say, hey, I'm going to paint your house for a certain amount.
Right.
Was there negotiation? How many no's did you get? How many people shut the door on your face?
Tons of, like, you know, for every 30, 40 no's, you get the one yes. Right. So
and that keeps you going.
So it's you really fast will deal with objection, right? But you learn not to take it personally. The more and more you deal with it, you just know it's like you can't be taken personal, because if you take it personally, that'll take you down a negative mindset, negative thought process, and it's like it's not worth it, right? But I think as you can build more experience, you figure out like what makes people say yes, and that's gotten me to where I am today, because it's the same value, right? People, the way I look at it is, if you're going to close something with someone, you have to first show them like what problem are you solving. Like if I just said, hey, we can paint your house, we'll give you a free estimate, like people are not going to care about that, right? But if I go to their house and I show them on the window that there's paint flaking, right, and this is probably going to cause more damage if we don't paint this because the wood's going to start to rot, like I'm painting a picture of what's going to happen, the financial burden they may be in if they don't solve the problem now, because it might only cost them $2,000 today, right? Or it's going to cost you 15, 20, 30 grand to fix the actual problem when it becomes bigger. Right? So then people connect those dots, and it's like, I don't want to be in that position, right? And Sunny has a solution, which is like, we'll paint the house, we'll get it done properly, we'll prep it, and that I don't have to worry about wood rot in the future, right? So that's the same thing with selling cars. It's the same thing when I worked at electronics, right? They have a TV that they want to buy, right? What's their lifestyle? Do they watch sports? Right? Well, if you watch sports, you don't want a fuzzy TV because the ball's moving really fast, right? So when you diagnose like what the needs are of the person, and then you tie that into this is the solution for them, then people buy.
So would you say it's more of like psychology mixing into the sales pitch of like,
for sure it is.
Understanding why they buy it?
You need to understand the psychology of like a human being and why they say yes to certain things. And it's called need fulfillment, right? You're fulfilling a need. So a lot of times, you know, an amateur salesperson, they don't actually diagnose needs, or they sometimes will sell based off of what they like. And that's a big problem, because if you're not actually understanding why they came into the store to begin with, and you're selling based off of your own personal experiences and that's it, well, more than likely they're going to walk because you didn't satisfy the whole reason of why they came in, which is to solve their problem, right? So it very much is, you got to diagnose the problem and then provide the solution for them so they can see it.
How quickly did you learn this? So you door knocked for the one summer or the one year?
The one summer.
The one summer.
Yeah.
And you took those skills and you took them to Visions, I believe.
So first it was when I left the franchise paint, and actually I'll explain why I left College Pro.
Yeah.
There was people that continued year after year.
Okay.
One thing I'm willing to accept is my weaknesses. My weaknesses is I'm not going to go on a ladder like 2 stories, 3 stories high, wear harnesses and things like that. Like it just wasn't me. Yeah. I never did stuff like that even growing up. I just was more sheltered almost, like in a way, when I was growing up. So I wasn't exposed to some of those things and I just wasn't a fan of it. So that's the only reason why I didn't continue on with the business. But what I knew is I was good at closing, right? I could close the sale. I could figure out the needs. And so I went to Future Shop. I applied to Future Shop, got the job. And I love electronics too. Like who doesn't like technology, right? TVs, home theater systems, like iPads, computers, you name it, right? So I'm like, this is like a dream for me to be able to work at an electronics store while going to school, right? So when I went to Future Shop, the cool thing was it was also a commission job, right? And so commission is, if you can hold the price of the item, then you obviously get paid more commission on it, right? Yeah. So, but to me, like, there's 2 types of salespeople. There's the one who just wants to sell the product for the sake of selling it and will drop the price, immediately just to sell the item. Yeah. Or you do what the alternative step, which is if you can build value in yourself, the organization, which is the company Future Shop, right? And then also build value in the customer themselves because you're fulfilling their need. If you can do those 3 things and check off the box, they're going to buy it, and they'll most likely buy it almost at full price or at full price, right? Because at that point, they're willing to give the money to you because you fulfill them, right? And that's the difference between a good salesperson and a weaker salesperson, right? Is one allows them to see the vision of the 3 check boxes, right?
It's crazy that you're saying this right now because as coming at it from a point of like engineering, these terms have never even been talked about at all with us, right?
Right.
And so it's so fascinating to see how the sale process actually works. Was there ever a moment where you thought that, I don't know this or I can't do this for a long-term time in terms of like whether it was getting on that ladder to paint the house or whether it was -40 and you're knocking on the doors? Was there ever a moment where you were like, this is too much?
Yeah, for sure. Like there's always been times of pressure building up to a certain point. Like, it's -40. Sometimes you're saying like, what am I doing?
Yeah.
Right. Sure. Like I'm going to business school, right? I'm in university trying to be educated with a degree, right? And I'm standing here in -40. Like, what am I doing with my life? Yeah. Right. But I think like those are like crucial points in your life that are make or break, right? If you give in to the weakness of like, you think you're better than the situation, like if I did that even with cars, like when I sold cars, like I was outside when it's winter, how much snow gets dumped in wintertime, right? I'm brushing the snow off these cars so I can go show a customer the car, right? And like I'm waiting for it for 10, 15 minutes in advance of the appointment so it's warmed up. Yeah. And I'm like, I graduated with a degree from the Asper School of Business, and I'm like, so why did I go to school for this? Yeah. Right? But if I dropped that brush and said I was bigger than this situation, I wouldn't be running a dealership.
That's true.
Right? So it's called backwards pay. There's actually it's a phenomenon, backwards pay. Like where I am today, I'm able to make the pay that I want in life because I did those things to get there. Right? Backwards pay comes from me brushing the snow off these cars, right? Getting these cars cleaned up, even myself if I have to hose it down because detail's busy, right? If I had ever said I was too big for these things, I wouldn't be in a position to run a dealership. So sometimes you need to know where your humble roots come from, and that's what gets you to running a dealership or whatever business you want to be in. You got to do sometimes those things to make you as an individual.
Yeah, you're putting the work in.
You're putting in the work in.
And if they see the boss is putting in the work, then your employees and your team that you have around you, all of a sudden they're like, oh, like if he's willing to do that, I should be willing to do that.
For sure.
Right?
Yeah.
Was there ever a story that you had maybe with someone who was your boss or your mentor or some people that you looked up to that gave you that kind of inspiration?
I've honestly been fortunate enough to have multiple individuals throughout my career progression who've helped me guide me to the right path. Gotcha. And a lot of them have the same, or very similar mindset of that you have to go through the different functions of a business to be able to run the business, right? And that's how respect is gained, right? When I go and I talk to a salesperson or if I talk to a service advisor, they look at me with, he did this, right? So I can trust that the advice he's giving me is coming from a good place, right? Sometimes you've been in businesses where that person's running an organization and they didn't do any of the roles, right? They have zero experience of doing like, you know, the most basic of roles. And it's like, and he's telling me what to do, right? It's like, you know, where is he coming from? Yeah. I bet you I have more experience than him, right? And so it's hard to respect a leader like that. So I'm a big believer that you should do the different roles, even if it's the first entry level roles, and then you grow yourself throughout the different departments to gain that experience, so that respect is earned that way, right?
I 100% believe that. It's like respect is earned, not given.
Not given.
And even from the smallest things to like picking up the shovel and like, you know, scooping the snow, even though it's minus 40, like someone's got to do it.
Someone's got to do it.
Yeah, and if have you ever seen the picture of it was like a pack of wolves, and then they're pulling a sled. And then one wolf, there's like two images comparing two leaders. And one wolf is like sitting on the chair, like hitting their guys or the wolf pack and saying like, move. And then the other one, it's the leader's up in front pulling the sled. And it's like, those are the two differences between a good leader and a bad leader. It's like,
yes,
you gotta earn that leadership spot, right?
Yeah, for sure. So yeah, I would say that's been a huge part of you know, what I can contribute to success for myself is like, you know, doing the things that I can relate to. And then it also makes me feel confident about, you know, providing advice because it's coming from a place of experience too.
Yeah.
Right? So people talk about like gut feeling. Gut feeling is just merely experience in disguise. Right? So when we say like my gut tells me to do this, it's because at some point in your life you've done something very similar to it that makes you feel confident about doing that. Right? So that's why the more experience you can gain, and then eventually when you want to run that business, when you make gut decisions, it's because you at some point you've done something very similar, and then it ends up being the right decision, right?
Yeah.
Because it came from a place of experience.
Yeah. And then so you've been pretty much selling all your life then, going from, you know, the summer to working at Future Shop and so forth. What were some of the skills that you took from the door knocking that you could transfer over to, let's say, a Future Shop? Because it's a little bit different, you would say, right? Instead of going to them, many of them are coming to you.
To you, yeah.
So what's that difference like?
I think you also, when you work at Future Shop, you appreciate not having to go and look for those customers, right? Yeah, you know, like it's called like cold calling or cold leads, right? These are warm leads because they came into the store with a purpose or a reason, right?
Yeah.
So I think automatically I was like way more appreciative and just be like, I don't have to go look for these customers; they're coming to me. But I guess what I could say, what I learned was, let's say the lead is warm, you know, when I'm door knocking and now they're at least genuinely interested in potentially painting their house, it was that value perspective, right? So like, how can I build value now with electronics like I did with painting that picture of, you know, if your paint's flaking, right? It's been over 10 or 15 years since the house has been painted. You're now jeopardizing the integrity of the house, right? So it's like, how can I now paint that picture with electronics, right? And so even in the car industry, usually there's a major function of life that causes someone to start searching, right? So for example, someone's buying a huge 75-inch TV, it's because they may have just built their basement or they moved into a new place and they want that experience. So now I'm tying it like why this TV is going to be a part of that experience, right? You know how you want to have your friends and family over to watch the big game, right? Can you imagine if you had all these home theater chairs, you had a popcorn machine, you had the 75-inch to go with it, right? How cool is it going to be to have people over and watch the game, right?
I might just go buy one right now.
Right.
You got me hooked.
Right? So it's like very much like, how do you tie it to life?
Yeah.
Right? And then when you paint, and painting the picture is huge, right? You have to be able to visually in their mind believe like they can see what's happening.
Yeah.
Right? Because like if I just went to Future Shop and I looked at a bunch of TVs, there's just so many of them, and it's just a rectangle on the wall, right? Like it doesn't mean anything, right? But the moment you have a salesperson who knows how to envision what the TV is going to look like in their basement, right? And then you explain, you know, what good can come from it when you have the people over, and everyone's going to want to come over to your house every month, right? Like that's now stroking into somebody's, you know, pursuit of happiness. Right, because that's what buying something is. You're trying to achieve some level of happiness from the product, right?
Yeah.
So are you trying to close as soon as they walk through the door?
Yeah. So there's a stat actually for the car industry. The average person visits 1.2 dealerships before they buy a car.
Yeah.
So if they don't buy the car from you, then they're going to buy it from the next visit. Which
that's pretty low, is it not?
It's very, very low.
Yeah.
And the only reason it's like that is because of how much information is available online now.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
Right? The average person is doing like 1 to 2 weeks of like homework And when I say 1 to 2 weeks, not like just like one day for like 30 minutes. Like we're talking about 1 to 2 weeks of like full comprehensive homework, right? So they probably know the cars better than even the salespeople because they're so focused on that one car that meets their needs, right? And so we will have customers who almost test the information of the salesperson to validate that, you know, even they also know what they're talking about, right? And so that's very important. Is like, we need to know our product knowledge because our customers are just as smart now. Right? They have all the information. They don't have to come in a dealership to get the information, right? You got consumer reviews, you got Reddit, you got people sharing experiences about their cars, right?
Yeah.
And so, you know, with the consumers being as educated as they are, right? We're just honestly there just to help validate that their decision of what they read online makes sense. And now just drive the car to make sure it's the right car. And then honestly, they're ready to buy because they've already figured out their financial budgets. They know what they're coming in with, right? And they may not say that their true budget. They may try to, you know, come in $50 or $100 less bi-weekly. But in their heart, they know that if it is the right car, that they're willing to, you know, go to the real budget, which is there, right? So, in the end of the day, like you're not going to walk away from something you love, right?
Of course. Especially if you see the value there. Right?
And that's the value is the biggest part, right? So, and that's what I always tell our salespeople is like, in the end of the day, you have to build value in yourself. So they have to trust you as an individual. You have to build value in St. James Volkswagen as a dealership. And so it's not just about selling the car. Because after you sell the car, they're going to service their car one day. They're going to do oil changes. They're going to do their tires, their brakes, right? So what part of our value build is like go introduce them to the service department before we show numbers. Show them what the parts department looks like. Go show them our collision center. God forbid you get into a collision, but don't worry, we have a solution for you because we can also service cars that get into collisions, right? So it's like again painting the picture of like it's not a one-stop shop. For the today, like I'm going to be able to come to St. James multiple times because they're going to have a solutions for everything I need.
That's incredible. How did you get started in the car industry?
Yeah, so that was interesting too because when I was at Future Shop, eventually it closed down because they converted them into Best Buys. They went away from non-commission to just normal hourly rates. So then Visions was the next step. Visions was also commission. And I was like, hey, I'm familiar with it. I like it. You get rewarded for the work you put in. So I did Visions. When I graduated from school, I actually had an opportunity to go run a Visions in Ontario.
Oh, wow.
And I was seriously considering it because I was like, you know, that's why I was trying to work my way up. You know, now I get to run my own business, right? But I had bought a BMW at the time. And then I just decided to treat myself. I said, hey, you know what? I work hard. I wanted to treat myself. I've always wanted a BMW, so I bought one. I kept a good relationship with the people who sold me the car. Just naturally being enthusiastic with like, they're in sales, you know, maybe I could have just conversations about like what sales is like in the auto industry. And they actually ended up talking to me one day when I was servicing the car and they're like, hey, are you still in school? And I'm like, no, I actually just graduated. And then they knew that I was just working at Visions in the meantime when I was in school and said, well, why don't you like seriously consider like trying the car industry, right? And I'm like, well, I have an opportunity to go run a business. Like, why am I going to go and be a salesperson again? Right? And they told me like sometimes you have to take a few steps backwards to take that step forward, right?
Wow.
And so, you know, they're saying, one, you have to go move to an entirely different province where you're going to leave your family, your friends, right? Or build yourself back up in the car industry, and also the income potential is going to be way higher. So when they shared the income potential and the goal and aspiration of like making it through the industry, I was like, you know what, like it's okay. I've did it before. I know I was good at selling. I have nothing to be afraid of. Let's give it a shot.
They sold you.
So they sold me 100%. Yeah, everything. And it's funny. Everything in life is a sale, and that's what I've learned. Right? Even if you've had to, you know, if you're let's say in a relationship, you had to sell the fact of your girlfriend of why they should pick you. Right? So like, or if you're your kid growing up, you had to convince your parents to let you go to that concert. So like people don't even realize, but you're literally selling every single day of your life in some capacity. Right? And so the more and more you realize that, everything just comes much more naturally because you realize it's, you know, who's going to be the one buying. Right? Is it right? And so your parents buy that vision from you because you convince them, right? Or they've convinced you that, you know, going to that concert is not safe and you're not going, right? So you got to figure.
I'm not a really good salesman.
I'll
be staying at my house all day.
Exactly. So
wow, that's amazing.
Yeah, so that concept it helped me for sure. But yeah, they sold me like you said, right? And honestly, it was the best decision I ever made, right? When I went to sell cars, it was funny. It's almost like it combined both the painting business of cold calling. I didn't have to go to the doors, right? But I had to make phone calls. Right? And you're calling people who, are not expecting you to call them. Yeah. They may be at work, right? You call them, they're having dinner with their family, right? So sometimes you feel, like you're interrupting people at different times of the day. Mm-hmm. Or sometimes they just don't pick up. You might make like 20 phone calls in a row and not a single person picked up their phone, right? And so it's like I had to like relearn how to cope with like, you can get in a negative mindset sometimes, right? It's like, man, 20 times I phoned different people and not a single person picked up. Like, I should have gone back to Visions, right? Because like people are coming through the door, right? Yeah. Uh-huh. But that helped build me like big time, right? It's like you have to have grit, like staying power, right? And like the definition of grit is like, no matter how hard things get, you're willing to stick it to the end, right? And so like I even told you, when I'm outside brushing the snow and stuff like that, there's times where your mind wants to play with you and wants you to cave into the temptation of like, I don't need to do this. Mm-hmm. Like I'm beyond this, right? Like, and I just went to Asper and why am I doing this, right? I should be going, to work for Deloitte as an accountant, right? Yeah. Like, let me go and start there, right? But if you have the grit and you are stronger than your mind, then you will adverse, right? Adversity is a huge part of it. So grit and adversity go hand in hand with each other, right? You have to be adverse through the tough times.
Mm-hmm. How do you become stronger than your mind?
So there's like a relationship between, the mind and yourself, like almost like a boss and an employee relationship, right? So for example, if you were to go to work and your boss says, hey, I need you to go stock the shelf. You're going to go stock the shelf. He's your boss. He told you what to do, right? Or she told you what to do. Right? If your boss tells you, I need you to go move some cars, like you're going to do it because it's your job's also on the line. You need to do it, right? Yeah. So it's like, I'm going to go do it. But for whatever reason, if we tell ourselves like, hey, you know what? I want to, let's say lose weight is a goal for yourself, right? You want to go to the gym and lose weight. You're willing to not do it sometimes.
Yeah, that's true.
Right? Yeah. Or you tell yourself, you know what? And I'm going to start investing. Right? And then it's like 1 year's gone by and you haven't invested into one stock yet. You keep telling yourself, you deceive yourself multiple times, saying that I'm going to do it, I'm going to do it, I'm going to do it. But the moment the boss told you to do something, you did it right away. Yeah. So what I've learned is that if you make your mind your boss and your mind told you need to do it, you need to commit to yourself the same way you would have committed to your boss in a workplace. Wow. And so that's how you have to master the mind, right? And so, your mind can be your biggest enemy or it can be your biggest proponent to success. And that's what I did. I trained my mind as like, if my mind told me that this is the goal I'm going to commit to, then no matter the cost, which comes with grit, you do it. Or resilience, you do it.
Why do you think that is? Why do you think we're able to just, as much as we want to do something, we almost can't or we don't?
Yeah.
Like, why? Is there an answer to that? I don't even know if there is.
I think it's a hard question to answer, but I think when it comes to like appeasing other people, we're quick to appease. Okay. But like we're okay not appeasing ourselves. Like we're okay like letting things slide or procrastinate or not even getting around to it. But if it's under like societal conditions where people are watching, then your image is in the line. Yeah. Gotcha. So you don't have to worry about your image with yourself because you can say in the end of the day, like, I am what I am.
I know me, yeah.
Right? And I'm okay with it, right? Like no one's watching me on the couch lying down sleeping, right? But the moment I'm in a social environment, all eyes on me. Yeah. Right?
Even if they're not on you. But they feel like
it's on you. Yeah, and sometimes 100%, right? Uh-huh. Eyes. You may think eyes are on you, right? Yeah. Because you're also thinking you're the most important thing in the world. Yeah. Right. But so meanwhile, like the whole world revolves around you. Yeah. Right. Meanwhile, everyone's doing their own thing, not caring about you, right? But we're so worried about what people care about that we'll do it for them, but we won't do it for ourselves.
Were there ever negative side effects to the grind, like always wanting to chase the next thing, or being so driven to chasing your goal that you almost lose sight? Like it's almost like tunnel vision, that you forget about the rest of the world because you're so focused on this one thing.
Yeah. It can happen for sure. You have to be careful. Like burnout is a real thing, right? You can burn yourself if you become a workaholic. You're only obsessed with your career development and advancement, and that's it. Obviously, there's more to life, right? Which we talk about. Self-care is important, right? Yeah. Whether it is physical fitness or mental health or the different aspects of your overall body, you can't just be only tunnel vision to just work, because there's only so much you can go with, right? You're going to exhaust yourself. Depression is a real thing. People can enter depression because they've just done that and not formed relationships with friends or family, or they shut everything off, right? And so you have to find a balance for sure with both. And the balancing can be found. Yeah. That's the key though, right? You don't have to give up your dreams and your passion. You can do both, right? Eventually I had to get married, right? I have a dog, right? Like I have different commitments that I find happiness in also, right? And I think we get caught up in that happiness only exists in maybe the career development only. And so that's no different than me trying sales. Yeah. So you have to try being in a relationship. You have to try maybe wanting that dog that you always wanted, right? When you try them and you get exposed to that, then you realize it's like, hey, you know what? I can be happy in different ways, right? It's not just from only wanting to move up in the world, right?
Did you have to learn that the hard way, or like when you realize that, hey, maybe I should try other things in life, where I'm always like dedicated to my goals?
Yeah, you know what's the hardest part is like when I saw my friends like traveling all the time, right? Like I've only just started traveling. Yeah. Right? So do I have maybe some, I wish I could have done this? Yeah, maybe I should have traveled a little bit more, right? There's only one life to live, right? And so when we say like, I'll do it when I'm older, like when I'm 50, 60, 70, how are you going to enjoy in the same physical capacity that you are as a young individual? You can't, right? And so we save up our money to hope to go and travel the world and do these things, but you end up spending the money back on your health, right? We buy these prescriptions, we pay into these treatments, just to take care of when we're 60 and 70. So it's like, no, you got to realize you have one life to live, and I'm in a good capacity now to experience them. We also don't know what tomorrow brings, right? When is the last day for us? We have no idea, right? So it's like, once you get those things into your mind, it's like you gotta enjoy every day to the fullest now. Don't worry about the future. The past is gone. Be in the present, and that's going to bring you the most happiness, right?
What were some of your aspirations when you first started? Like, especially now you're convinced, okay, I'm going to be in the car industry. Yeah. What were some of your aspirations?
Yeah. So after there was actually one individual who, acted as a mentor to me when I became a finance manager. And so one of my aspirations, he actually made me write it on a piece of paper, because it's how he was almost like a coach. So like he helped me learn the job of being a finance manager, getting me through being successful. And it was actually a mindset almost training, right? But a part of it, of him getting to know me, was that, what are your aspirations in moving up in life? And I actually wrote, I want to be a general manager of a dealership, right? I am a big believer that if you write things down, or you say it enough times, you can will things into fruition, because that's just how the world gives to you, right? There's certain energies in the world. I'm a spiritual person. I'm a big believer. You surrender yourself into, willing something, it'll happen, right? You just have to put the action behind it. The action, the world gives back to you then, right? And so, he told me, he's like, what do you want to do? And I said, I want to be a general manager, right? But a lot of times you may just look at it and be like, it's just a silly question, right? Like, who knows when it's going to happen, or does he even really care, right? And to this day, we're literally like best friends. And he always brings that up into other conversations. He does like a lot of public speaking, and he trains other finance managers in different groups. And he always brings our story. He's like, Sunny wrote on a piece of paper, and now we look a few years later and he's running a store, right? So it's like, take this seriously. Like, what you put on this piece of paper, like, this can come into fruition. This can be a reality for you, right? As long as you put the work in, right? So you can never excuse hard work. The work has to come, right? Just putting it on a piece of paper, it's not going to happen. Right? And so, you got to put the work behind it too. So.
But you wanted to be a general manager.
Yes.
That was you walked in and you're like, I'm going to the top.
Yeah, because at Visions I was going to run a store, right? So I was like, if I'm going in the dealership, like it's back to the same goal. Like, I got to run a store one day.
Yeah, I gotta make it
right? And so it's like, I'll do whatever it takes to get there.
Gotcha.
Right? So
was there ever a moment that the goal shifted? You were maybe like, nah, maybe not a GM, like maybe general sales manager, like something different, where there's a lot of times where you start doubting yourself, and doubting your goals, and maybe priorities change in life, and your goals change. Was there ever a moment like that?
I think one thing you have to be careful of is when other people tell you how long it takes for something to happen, right? Everyone else has an opinion about something, and you have to be careful if you let that opinion become a reality.
Right.
You know, people might say that, you know, in order to become a sales manager, it's going to take you 5 years, right? From a salesperson to a sales manager, right? And then if you want to be a general sales manager, well, you better wait for another 5 years, right? Like, you're in line, buddy, right? Like, and it's like, that's not necessarily the case, right? Because an organization is going to promote the person that delivers on results. Like, yes, putting time in is important, but not more important than the person who actually changed the results fundamentally, right? So I was very fortunate. Like, I sold cars for 10 months, right? I didn't have to sell cars for 5 years. And after 10 months, I became a sales manager. I actually did that only for 10 months too. I did that for 10 months, and then I became a finance manager, did that for 1 year, right? So my career progression was like rather quick, but I made sure that my results were in the pudding, right? Like, proof was in the pudding. Right. And so that allowed me to get promoted at a very fast scale. So to your question, no, did I ever change my mind of not being a GM? There was actually a point. After I became general sales manager, I did that for 2 years. I actually went to the head office of the company that, you know, owns St. James Volkswagen. So Auto Canada is the company. There's 65 dealerships across the country, plus other businesses under their umbrella. And I got to manage F&I nationally for the company. And so my actual goal was like, you know, I realized it's like, maybe I'll be president of Auto Canada one day, right? It's like, the goal will never end, right? It's like, you just want more and more and more. So I did that for 1.5 years, and then St. James opportunity opened up to run the store. The general manager took a different opportunity, and I was like torn. I was like, I'm already at head office, right? Like, I'm already get to work on a national level, like huge experience, right? But I also knew that I wanted to be a VP one day, and a VP of operations where you manage general managers. So going back to that question of, you know, if you're in a leadership role, respect is not given, it's earned. I said, let me go be a GM, get that experience, and do a good job at it. Because when I be a VP, if a GM says, well, hey, did you ever run a store? Yes, I did. Right? I have done it. I did a successful job at it. And what I'm going to share with you is coming through experience. Right? And so I just want to make sure I'm equipped for the VP role when the time is right. So I ended up going back to run the store, but it was a tough decision because I also felt like I'm already at head office. Like, I'm going to go back now to the retail environment. Right?
How are you able to acquire, I guess, this set of skills at such a rapid pace? For example, being a salesperson on the sales floor, the skills are very different than maybe being a general manager.
For sure, yeah.
And so if you're accustomed to sales for 10 months or however long, and now you're put in a position to be a general manager, how are you able to acquire those skills so quickly to be like excel at the job?
Yeah, for sure. I would say that one of the biggest advices I can give for that is the company you keep. The company you keep will actually be the determination of how you develop your skill set. I've always surrounded myself with people that were better than me in my mind, right? People that were already GMs before, people that are in a higher position than I was, right? It's very easy for your ego to be, I want to be in a circle where I'm the best. How are you going to grow your skill set if you're the best and you're the only one giving advice to people? It's impossible, right? So you're only going to be as good as yourself because you're not surrounding yourself with people that are actually better than you. Right. So I was fortunate, like I said, to be surrounded by mentors on purpose. I made sure I hung out with them, right, and picked their brain like crazy and was, you know, I'm at their feet, right? You guys are better than me. You've done the job before, right? Or you're doing the job, right? Like, you're the people that I want to be with, I want to go to dinner with, that I want to hang out with, you know, in the evenings, right? So I've always hung out with people that were typically older than me just by nature of the roles that they're in. But I think that was the best decision I ever did because my mind opened up like crazy to different, you know, thoughts or, you know, ways of doing things that I never even thought were the way you should be doing something. And even being encouraged to read certain literature that they read that I exposed myself to it at a younger age. And I'm thinking like, you know, of a person who operates to run a business of an organization with 100 people and no different managers and et cetera, right? So I read lots of leadership books. I read a lot of things to do with psychology that if I hadn't surrounded myself with those people, I might have not maybe read them for another 20 or 30 years.
Did you ever have the negative side of like, hey, you're so young, how can you actually run a whole dealership by yourself?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, there's definitely a stigma, like, you know, you know, he should be like 40 or 50 years old, you know, to be running the dealership. Like, he's at a younger age. But I think very quickly when I come into conversation with someone, because I've read the literature and I've surrounded myself, when they hear me talk and also the action behind it, like I told you, action is the most important part, then it's hard to, put that down, right? Because I'm hoping that at least I came from a point of credibility.
Yeah.
Right? Again, if I would just put in the role because I had a relationship with, let's say I had a family member who already was in the auto business and they just put me as a GM, right? It's a tough battle you're going to face because everyone's going to say, well, he only got the job because he's family, right? But I made sure that that's never the case, right? It's like, no, I did what you guys had to do. I went through all of it, right? And if you hear me talk about leadership, I'm so passionate that their mindset starts to change. And it's like, I understand why. The why behind why he's running the store is because like he genuinely wants to change people's mindset and elevate them to a point where they never thought they could be elevated, right?
And
so
what are you asking in these mentors, like when you're hanging out with them? Or it's like, yo, tell me how to do that. Like, are you asking like logistical things, or are you just trying to see their mindset and how they operate? What are you trying to see from them? Or gain from them?
Yeah, for sure. It's a mix of things, right? Like obviously running a dealership, you need to understand the fundamentals of the operations, right? So like how is a service department run, parts department run? Like these are very operational things. You need to know the operations to run the dealership, right? But I think the biggest thing that I learned from them is like culture, right? Like in the end of the day, like everyone has a workplace to go to, but if you ask anybody why they typically leave, it's not because of money, it's because of culture, right? You can give someone a raise, try to keep them, but if they're leaving, they've already left you in their mind, right? Even if you give them a little bit more money, it's like a Band-Aid solution, right? They got attracted to the money, but then again, they're going to quickly be depressed again of why, I don't want to work here because the culture is not great. So what a lot of these mentors told me, it's like, it's a people business. We're in the business of people, and people is not just the customers that are coming in your door. It's the people that work for you, right? That work with you, right? And they have to be happy every single day they come to work. Because if they're not happy, the money's only going to take them so long, right? So there's tons of people that will walk away from a 6-figure job because they're not happy when they come home, right? It's constant friction between different departments. It's constant friction with their bosses, right? They don't feel that they're heard or et cetera, or that their family's valued because they're family time. Like it's a balancing act, right? And so in the end of the day, like at our dealership, all my department managers know that it's like, it's a people first, right? You need to invest in their success, and they will invest into our success. It is a two-way relationship. It's like a bank account. We deposit, they deposit. We withdraw when we need to withdraw, they withdraw when they need to withdraw, right? And so you have to, it's transactional that way, right? But as long as the transaction's not one way, people stick, right? And so that's how you grow retention. It's funny, the dealership business is known to be high turnover.
High turn.
A lot of people will leave a dealership after a few months or even after a year, right? But like one thing we take big pride at our dealership is that people stay for a long time, right? And we promote from within is our big thing. A lot of businesses will have to promote for managers from a different, company. It's not their own people that they're willing to promote, right? Because the reason is they never cared about people or culture. So if you don't care about elevating your bench strength and you don't have a bench strength, they're always going to be looking outside of your organization. And that's not a good look for anybody who works there because they're going to say every single promotion happened from outside. So what does my future look like?
True.
Right? You can't feel good. And as a leader, how can you feel good about having to bring people from outside all the time?
So as a leader, how do you align the values of, or the core values, right? Culture is a big thing now. How do you align the core values of what St. James is to what the individual person, for example, what if they don't believe in like the people? Like, is that, then it's just not a culture fit, or is there a way to change the mindset?
So there's a book called Tribal Leadership, and I'd highly recommend the book to you guys. But what that book does, it helps you identify people in different stages of life. So there's like stage 1 to stage 5. And so your organization, you try to keep in a certain stage, but when someone enters the dealership as a new employee, right, you have to realize that they're not going to be at the same stage maybe as the dealership, and they're coming from maybe a different stage, and you have to help them get to the stage that the dealership's at. So like, for example, at stage 1, they talk about like life sucks. It's just a general outlook. Life sucks. These are people typically who, exposed to drugs, they're addicts, gang warfare. It's like the very extreme of society to be in part of. So they grew up in just a life sucks mentality, right? A leader typically, a leader is dealing with what we call stage 2 and stage 3. Stage 2 then becomes my life sucks. So you can acknowledge that it's not that life sucks. It's just I'm in a situation where I'm not doing the best, right? And so a lot of individuals will be in a stage 2, right? They're not in drugs or gang warfare, not to the extreme, right? But they just think that everyone else has it better than I do, right? So as a leader, you need to identify like people who are in different stages of life. Stage 3 then becomes that, you know, I'm the greatest, right? So it's a I mindset. It's not about anybody else. It's just that I feel good about myself, and that's all that matters, right? And then stage 4 becomes we are great, right? And so as a leader, it's like very important that you build a team atmosphere. So it's like, how can I get that person to think it's not about I all the time? It's like when we succeed, that's the best form of happiness, right? And stage 5 is a very rare. It's not a typical stage, but stage 5 is that, you know, the world's great, and that we're just going to work for the purpose of solely good only, right? But that's typically people who are finding the cure for cancer that's beneficial for humanity, right? And so businesses may not operate at, you know, that level of stage, but just to say that we are great is like the best enlightened stage you can be in, right? And so when we talk about it's like how you have an individual who comes and doesn't get the culture, it's not because they didn't get the culture, it's because you didn't identify what stage they're at and how can you help them nudge them to stage 4 eventually. Right? So it's a diagnosing. You need to diagnose different people of your team and know what stages they are in and help them get to stage 4.
Yeah. Is there any like specific tactical things that you guys do at St. James when, like, let's say an employee comes in that kind of reinforces that culture right away?
Yep. I mean, right away, the first thing we do is it's a tour of the whole dealership, and you introduce them to every single department, right? It's like very important to not just be like, hey, he's a new salesperson, just meet the new salespeople. Don't worry about the rest of the dealership. That happens in some places, right? It's like, well, why do they need to concern themselves with, you know, service or parts right now? Like that can be later on, right? But it's like, no, if we're one team, then you need to operate as one team, and that means introducing that person to every single department, right? They should know who everyone is. They might not remember all the names, but they'll remember that it's like, hey, you know, who is this person, right? We do something called a town hall that happens once a month. We actually recognize new team members in that town hall. So we make them stand in the middle. We all celebrate them. Congratulations for joining St. James Volkswagen. But town hall it's an information exchange that I hold at the dealership. And it allows different department managers to talk about successes, areas of opportunity, things that may have not gone well by department, right? And so most dealerships, they don't do things like that. They stick to their own silos, let's call it, right? And they celebrate each other's successes in their own silos, but no one shares information with each other, right? So it's like, I am very much about culture, and I do this intentionally where we have these large group meetings once a month. I provide lunch to the whole staff. Like everyone gets to just chat with each other in a big setting, right? Rather than it's just like your 2-3 friends that you hang out with every single day at work, right? So it's like, I'm trying to encourage, you know, cross networking within my own dealership. Right? If someone gets promoted, we celebrate them, right? Like internal promotions, we're like, hey, an internal promotion happened this month. Let's congratulate this person, right? So it's very intentional and tactical, like you said. It's just to make sure that we stick like glue.
Is this because you maybe saw other dealerships when you were first starting not do these things?
Correct.
Yeah.
Yes.
What were some of the major red flags when you like saw these dealerships? You're like, I can't believe they're not doing this.
You know what? I think the biggest, like, I'm not here to name names of that too, right? But when I've seen dealerships or worked in dealerships, it's lots of like fighting between departments, right? Like you have your sales department, right? You rely on service to, let's say, like safety a car. You have to safety the car in order to sell the car, right? Service doesn't care about prioritizing you, like your last priority. You know, I don't care you sold the car. Like we got other people to deal with right now. You're bottom of the list. Right? So it's like that kind of mentality is not operating as one team, right? That salesperson's never going to feel good about the service department, right? And so they get secluded back to just, you know, their team only, right? And it's like one thing I take big pride in is like my department managers work so well with each other, and they welcome each department's employees back and forth, and we give them information that's actionable and there's solutions behind it, right? We talk about it if there's no solution, like it's very open. Gotcha. Open dialogue, doesn't matter who the employee is. Right?
That's so interesting.
Yeah.
Because, I was just saying, like, the dealership world is something that, you know, myself and Arsh are not immersed in at all. But, you know, we've all walked into a dealership. And you can almost tell the way that people greet you and the environment. You can sort of semi-tell right away. It's one thing to see the nice cars in the showroom,
for sure,
but then who the person is,
right?
That's another thing as well. And as you know, myself and Arshdeep get into this world of entrepreneurship and figuring things out, I think the leadership side is something that, we'll be honest, is not something we have right away.
Right.
And so learning those things and learning those tactics are something that we want to learn,
for sure,
to be honest. And I think a lot of our listeners will probably want to learn as well.
And that's why I applaud the podcast that you guys do, right? Because you're bringing in different experienced leaders in different organizations or industries, and you're now you're exposing yourself to those tactics, right? That they've used to help make them successful.
100%.
Right? So automatically, like how I said, I try to surround myself in company of that. You're doing that by naturally,
That's true.
right? And so it's a testament to even the listeners, right? If they're listening to this, they're also not being exposed to maybe certain things that they didn't think of, or a thought process that hopefully they can go implement and then help drive their success too, right?
We did touch on this a little bit earlier in the episode, but how has the world of social media influenced dealerships and the sales point, right? You touched on it that, the static or stats has go down to 1.2 visits for a dealership now.
Yeah.
But in terms of, client retention or client engagement, how does that impact your dealership from a social media standpoint? Is it like, if they're not creating those viral TikToks, then they don't have the best sales team, or how does that help you?
You definitely have to use social media to your advantage. There's no doubt about it. That's the day and age we live in. I think letting the community know that, let's say we were the top volume of that month for a Volkswagen dealership, making a post like that, or when we, collaborate on the Christmas project, right? Like, that we do care about the community and things like that. It's just it's an awareness thing, right? If you don't bring things into people's awarenesses, then it's typically forgotten very quickly. And so, you do need to have some level of consistent social media in terms of marketing and advertising about the business, just to keep awareness strong with people. It's just a connection, right? But, social media for dealerships can also be very detrimental, right? All it takes is one bad customer experience that was very extreme, right? It gets blown out of proportion on social media, and then you become the bad guy, right? And it's like, never do business with this organization, never do business with this, place. Then you get a bunch of people like, oh, I never knew this happened. That's crazy. I'm never going to go there, right? But all it takes is one person's experience to paint this image that's reality. And now you have to figure out how can you course correct that image, right? In damage control.
That's true.
Right?
And we've seen different industries change due to social media and different avenues. Do you think the sales process has changed over the years in terms of the way that people sell, or is that core fundamental throughout everything?
The core of any sort of sales process, it stays the same. I think, is there faster ways to do business? Yes, right? Maybe before it took 3 hours to try to sell a car, now it takes only 1 hour to sell a car, right? Is there technological advances? Yeah, these all things for sure are coming, and we have to adapt or you die, right? Because people want speed of business, right? It's like my time's valuable. Can you do this fast or not, right? But the core of like, we're in the business of people, that doesn't change, right? How you connect to someone at a human level, that doesn't change,
of course.
Right? And so nothing will replace that. People will do business with someone they trust. Right. And so that's back to however many years dealerships have been open for, right? It's all about, it's a trust-based business.
What does your day-to-day look like as a GM, as someone, kind of the boss? The boss of the dealership. This is your store. What does your day-to-day look like? I mean, it's funny because you have to be willing to, be prepared for different surprises that can happen, right? Whether it's, there's an issue that you're dealing with, it's just sporadic, right? You got to be quick on your feet to problem solve. But I mean, from an overall like general day to day, right? It's very much pulse checks with my different departments, right? Like I said, I used to be a general sales manager, so I know what to ask of the general sales manager in terms of questions I'm asking, right? Like, how many appointments do we have for the day, right? Are we set up for success for the weekend, Thursday, Friday, Saturday? How does business look, right? Do we have a training schedule lined up for our salespeople? It's very important to continuously sharpen your blade, right? So do we have training lined up? And then same thing with the different departments, service, parts. Do they have training lined up, right? What does their book of business look like in their pipeline, right? So it's like just being very on top of like, inspect what you expect, right? I think a lot of leaders fail to inspect what they expect. They just say, hey, go get it done. I told you to get this done, go get it done. But if there's no follow-up of inspecting, then you're going to catch the problem when it's too late,
month's done and you missed your target, right? But if I inspect on a weekly basis of like, hey, this was the goal that we said we were going to achieve, and then at the end of the week I check in and see where we're at, right? And I actually look at the daily activities that help to get us to the goal. Well, I can really quickly problem solve. Like, hey guys, remember we were supposed to make 30, 40 phone calls a day, but we only did 10 per salesperson?
Yeah.
Well, no wonder we're not getting to where we need. That's why we don't have appointments. Like, it's really quick to problem solve why something isn't happening. Right? So yeah, inspecting what you expect and be curious like George. You know, George, Curious George the monkey? Right? Like, I tell all my department managers, be curious like George, right? Like, go and dive in and be diagnostic. Like, one thing we're very fortunate with our company at Auto Canada, they provide so much data dissection. Like, we have a it's called Tableau reporting. Like, a lot of people know about Tableau, but yeah, they have reports out of the yin yang. Like, anything you can think of, there's a reporting behind it. And reports are great because it quickly tells a story, right? You look at the data and you look at a trend, right? It's like, if 2 months in a row something's happening, well, the definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over and expecting different results. So if the data is telling you that you're falling and declining for the next 2 to 3 months, you got to do something different, guys, because it's not working what we're doing. Right? And so you have to be careful that you don't drive yourself insane by doing the same thing.
Where do you find the balance between being almost like a leader that's, hey, I'm your friend and like I'm doing this for the good of you, and being the bad guy and be like, hey, like, I know my shit and you have to do it because I've done it, right? I've gained that respect to do it. So where's that balance of being the dictator and almost like the head of the pack?
Yeah, so one thing I had to learn super quick in leadership is that I think sometimes we want to problem solve for people by giving them the answer right away. Right? And so a lot of times when you do that, you're damaging growth, right? Because you know how to do it, well, what benefit is it if you're just going to keep giving everyone the solution on how to do it? Most people actually have the solution, but you have to ask them 3, 4, 5 different times, and it comes out of creativity from their mind. So I've trained my managers and I've trained myself that it's like, pause for a second. I know the answer. I know I can probably save a 10-minute conversation from happening, right? And get back to what I want to do. But if I don't spend this 10 minutes on getting that person to come up with a solution themselves and then reconfirming that was the right thing to do all along, right? Then every single time they're not going to be able to think for themselves, right? And so if you do it a couple of times, you'll be surprised how much creativity comes out of the people. Creativity was always there, but you just never allowed them to be creative because you always answered for them. Right? So we just be very cautious that even though we can probably solve it in 30 seconds or 1 minute, how are you going to have future leaders being able to solve the biggest problems of the dealership when you've answered all of them? Right? And that's also dangerous because now you're the leader that everyone has to keep asking. Right? Anything even small happens, I need to ask Sunny because I'm not sure what's going to happen if I don't ask him. Right? And my whole day will be gone into these little problems which are not actually a big deal. Right? And everyone is capable of solving them, and I could be focusing on big picture things.
Have you had that where people are coming to you for the smallest of things and you're like, come on, man, like
100%.
You can figure it out?
Yeah, it happens. You'll be surprised. It happens way more than you think. But that's also because you have to be careful that you don't ridicule people for coming up with the wrong idea. Right? Because they're afraid of even voicing their opinion on something. Right? It's like, that's so stupid. Why would you even think of that's a solution? Right? Punishment is very detrimental to growth. Right? And so we can't punish. It has to be, we call it like a forgiving environment. Right? No judgment environment. Let them come up with let them even make the mistake. Right? Like we talk about in our dealership, like buying cars. If someone's going to try to buy cars, they're probably going to make mistakes buying the wrong inventory for our lot. They may have overpaid for the car. We're going to lose money when we sell it, right? They bought a red color car when we know red was a terrible color, right? But if I don't let them make those mistakes and see the mistakes happen, that's a part of the growth of being a used car manager or buying cars, acquiring cars, right? And so that happened to me. I was super scared the first time my manager told me, I just buy 5 cars. He's like, don't worry about it. Just buy 5. Right? And then we'll talk about, what the 5 you bought, why you bought them, what was the thought process behind them, right? Justify it. And then that was the best exercise I could have ever done. I was super scared because I thought I would be criticized, but it was very much a non-judgmental. It's like I made 1 mistake or 2 mistakes on how I bought them, but because he explained the why behind they were mistakes, I just made sure that it's like, hey, I know what to look for now moving forward when I keep buying cars.
Is there something against red cars? Like I have a red car.
You have a red car?
I have a red Mustang.
For whatever reason, it's like black and white's a very black, white, grays. Okay. Those are your safest colors. This typically we talk about.
Damn it.
So if it's like a red car, we sometimes say it may take longer to sell.
Okay.
Right? So it's just a joke we say, but not that people don't buy a red car.
I love my red car.
Yeah. You know, but or it's no different than, you know, like there's insurance like in Ontario. If it's a red car, automatically you have to pay more premium because red is associated with speed. So they think someone with a red car is going to speed.
That's crazy.
Right? So it's just it's a psychological thing, right? But and there's validity behind it because that's why they charge the premiums they do. But yeah, apparently if you were to do a survey, people with red cars are more likely to speed.
So this comes down to like the data sort of thing?
Yeah, 100%.
Is there any other like random data that is tracked that like you look at and you're like, why is this being tracked? When you get like those reports, those tableaus of things of, because you said there's like a lot of them. Is there like you obviously see, okay, how many calls and sales and cars sold, but is there something like quirky or weird that you're like, oh, this many, if a car has 2 door handles versus 4 door handles, like, I don't know.
Yeah.
Like, is there something like that
I think
sells more or is better?
I think for the most part, like the data is pretty like black and white.
Okay.
The story that you get from them, like it makes sense.
Yeah.
Right? Like, and sometimes it might be short-minded to think that it's not making sense to you right now, but like after like 90 days of looking at it, it's like I missed the whole story, right? And now I understand. So you have to be careful that you don't miss the story too. Like you have to be quick at looking at data constantly because data is evolving based off of consumer demand, right? Like even with COVID, that was a huge thing. What happened with COVID is very unique. New cars production like almost halted.
Yeah.
We had microchip shortages, which prevented us from getting new inventory. And then the used car market like flew through the roof, right? A car that someone maybe, let's say, paid, 15 grand for, all of a sudden is worth 18 grand after them driving it for a year or two, right? And it's like they were in a market that no one would have ever thought was possible, right? But if I look at it from a data perspective, it makes no sense. How can a used car appreciate in value like that? Unless it's like a collector car, like a Porsche of a unique model or whatever. Right? Or a Lamborghini that's very like 1 in 10 or 1 in 100. But any other normal used car follows the law of depreciation, right? But COVID defied the law of depreciation for many people, right? And so, if I were just to look at it, like you said, data-wise, the data doesn't make sense. That's quirky. Why is used cars going up? But it makes sense because there was no new inventory.
Going on.
Right? So you have to dig more and more until it makes sense.
Let's talk about the word of COVID and for car dealerships especially. What was that like when it was announced? How you guys went through it? The team, what they were thinking, and what was your position at that time?
I just became general sales manager, and I was so scared because all of a sudden when COVID happened, like no one knew this is something devastating, right? People are getting affected so fast. Now you got to wear masks, right? And our question was like, were dealerships going to shut down? Right? Until things are back to normal, right? But dealerships got mandated as essential business because people use cars for transportation, right? You can't go without a car most of the time, right? And so, if a car breaks down, you have to service the car, right? Engine issues, whatever it may be, right? Oil changes, you got to do all these things to have a car, right? So we had to adapt real fast because how can you now you're not overcoming just like how to sell a car. You're overcoming like, can I trust going into a dealership when I'm scared of COVID? What if I'm going to get sick? Right? I'm going to expose myself. It's not worth the risk. Right? And imagine these salespeople who are not equipped to deal with something like this. Is the first time for COVID, and they have to make these phone calls. It's already tough enough to build appointments, and now you have to convince someone why it's safe. Right? And so with that, we did marketing, like a video of like what are some of the measures we do at the dealership to ensure safety. Right? Because now we have 2 humps to overcome. Right? Safety is just to get them through the door, and now we have to sell the car on top of that. Right?
Wow.
And so, was it easy? No, absolutely not. But I think that helped build people's character. It's like, we handled COVID, then what's a problem? Nothing. Right? You guys figured out how to navigate COVID, and now anything is easy for us. Right? So I think it's like, if I look back, COVID was one of the best things that ever happened. Because people learned how to build the strong character out of that, right? And how to overcome like a real objection. It's not even a fake objection,
of course,
right? It's like people are getting sick, people are going to the hospital. Like it's a real problem you're dealing with, and I need you to figure out how we're going to overcome it, right? So
when you have the extreme highs and when you have the extreme lows of COVID, right? How do you keep your teams motivation there? How do you keep them motivated to chase the goal of selling the cars and making sure that you are on the right path?
So what actually needed to be done for us was like, rather than just tell salespeople you have to go do your job, right? Because it's really easy to just say, hey guys, keep making more phone calls, right? But that's not really solving the problem. Managers had to get real involved and be creative with the teams, like while helping them making the phone calls, right? A lot of managers will say, well, I'm not a salesperson anymore. I don't need to make that phone call, right? But it's like, you can't think like that, because like they're only as good as what they're taught and also role modeled, right? And so we need to be role models, including myself. Like, how can we try to make these phone calls with them and adapt the script? How do we change the script so that people feel safe about coming, right? So, even managers were showing cars. Like we allowed salespeople who didn't feel comfortable. You're not going to force someone who doesn't feel comfortable selling cars during COVID. So some people would have laid themselves off, right? And then want to only come back when they feel safe to come back, right? So we were dealing with like a thin floor. Right. At one point where we had 10 to 12 salespeople, we only had like, 5 or 6 because half the people didn't feel safe, selling cars. True. Right. And so it's like managers had to look at each other and say, hey guys, like if we have to now go sell a car, pull up our pants, like roll the sleeves up and you got to do what you got to do. Right. Yeah. But if we don't lead by example, how can we expect them to do it? Yeah. Right. And that's what leadership is. It's also leading by example when times are tough. Yeah. Right.
Out of all these aspects, sales, managing, teamwork, team building, what would you say is your most enjoyable and not enjoyable part? Like, what do you enjoy the most doing and what do you don't enjoy at all? You're like, maybe someone else can do that, but you have to do it anyway.
I think it's funny. I think the answer is actually it's related to both, actually. Okay. I think enjoyable is like when someone, like I said, develops such a mindset to what you're thinking, like they got to that state and they understand the why behind things. They start looking at data, making decisions. They realize that it's like, I actually can be way better than I thought I could be, right? Because I put in the daily results. What you do in the dark comes to light, right? And so but then the other part of it is too, it's like if you hold such a high standard for yourself, you have to be careful that when you try to hold other people to the same level of standard, it takes time to get them to that standard. Right? We expect results overnight sometimes. That's just how it is, right? Like for me, I know I'm going to go do the job right away, right? I hate procrastinating, right? But if I ask somebody else to like get something done and it's been a week and it's not been done, it's like inside it's killing you because you would have just done it right away. True. Right? And so I feel like we're dealing with a generation that sometimes does procrastinate more than they should. We call it, like, even with COVID, right? It's people were working from home. They don't have to go to work every single day, right? Like even in a certain degree, we can say it's a detrimental to maybe form some laziness also, right? But now that COVID's done, now people have to go, like a dealership, you got to be at work every single day, right? So now we're combating people. It's like, well, why should I go to work at a dealership when I can go work a hybrid job? Right? Because hybrid jobs is still a thing to some companies. Right? Now we're trying to reverse hybrid. Right? It's like, we don't need to be hybrid anymore, guys. Like collaboration happens more in person than it does over a hybrid format, right?
Agreed.
So it's like that can be tough sometimes. It's like trying to overcome those adversities where it's like people, why can't I just do hybrid? Or, why can't I just get it done a week later? Right? And so you have to be careful. Like, yes, it's important to hold people to a standard, but you have to grow the standard over time. You can't expect them to be just like you overnight. It's not possible.
Throughout your whole career, what would you say was the one lesson that you stick to? That's the reason I am Sunny, the GM of St. James. Like, what's the lesson that you hold close to your heart?
I think one thing I actually hold very, very close is there's a saying, you're either moving forwards or backwards. You're never standing still. True. So a lot of times when we think we're cruising, you're actually probably moving backwards. Yeah. People that cruise in life thinking that it's like, I'm good where I'm at, right? Everyone else is actually going ahead of you at that point in time. And so like why I was able to move up constantly is because I thought about that, right? It's like if I were just okay being a sales manager forever, or if I want to just be a GSM forever, that's probably my mindset actually degrading at that point because my aspirations have stopped, right? And my minimum standard hasn't changed, right? So you're only as good as your minimum standards, right? Your greatest aspirations are your minimum standards. You have to keep changing your minimum standard, right? Same thing with like a bank account, right? Like if you're used to just having $1,000 in your account in your checkings account all the time and you're happy with that, then you're happy with that, and it's never gonna, and then you're not gonna go past that, right? Yeah. But if it's like, hey, I know one day now I want to have 10,000, then one day I want to have 100,000, right? Like you will continue to elevate past that, right? Because you're changing with your minimum standard, right? And so that's why that's tied to you're either moving forwards or backwards in life, never standing still, right? And that's been my motto.
How do you deal with the what's next moment? So like if your goal was to be the GM and you've achieved that, and in your mind that was like the biggest thing I could achieve, right?
Right.
For myself, it's the Lamborghini that's parked next to you, the toy Lamborghini. I mentioned it twice today, which is crazy. But if once I achieve it, like I'm done. Like that to me, I'm good. Life's good. Like I can die peacefully. No, like, that was my goal in life.
Right.
Currently, at the current moment I'm speaking right now. But so, for example, like if your goal is to be the GM and you've made it,
right?
You enjoy it. Like congrats, you're here. But how do you change your goal now to push it further?
Yeah. So that's the crazy thing too. Is like once now I've been a general manager, I now look at other stores and I'm seeing like how much bigger they are becoming, right? And it's like, how do I get there, right? Like I have stores within my same company, and they're pushing out another 50 more cars or 60 more cars than I'm pushing, right? And it's like, so like my journey just begun, right? Like they're marketing at a way higher force than I'm marketing myself, right? Like, I give an example like McNaught GMC. That's a big dealership with us in Winnipeg, right? They do higher volume than us, right? They do heavy marketing, right? And so the general manager of that dealership put in so much effort for the last few years to get him to where he's at. And so I've only been doing this for a year. So it's like, I've got lots of time to go, right? I'm not even close to where the state of this dealership could be, right? So I need to start doing those aggressive things. I need to start not competing with with other dealerships. I need to be the leader, right? I need to set the trend, right? Because right now I'm just in a state of competing, right?
How do you do that?
Sorry?
How do you do that? As a dealership, how do you do that?
Well, so originally, like I said, you're in a state of competing. And so once you are able to compete at a good enough pace, then you can only elevate to the next step, which is like, how can I be the trendsetter, right? Like, how do I hear the stories where it's like, I heard Sunny at St. James did this, this, and this, right? We need to imbibe this in our business, right? And then it's like, so when you become that talking, face in the industry, right? Where it's like, I think that's another level of fulfillment, right? Like it's one thing to just to say like we're smashing, our budgets. Budget's one thing, right? That's good for my boss, right? Just to say that I've done my job, right? But I think when I hear like feedback where it's like I heard Sunny's been doing this at St. James, or I heard St. James has been doing this, and I came up with that idea, or we came up with that idea, and that will be the next stage of fulfillment. So fulfillment will never end. You're chasing fulfillment in different levels, right? And I think we have a long ways to go where we can get to those different stages of fulfillment.
Do you see some trends in the car industry right now that either all dealerships should be doing, only some are doing, things that maybe even you're chasing?
Yeah, so I mean, I would say like trends are more so just like how we cater to the customers are in our environment. Like just how detailed can you be on your online merchandising of vehicles? If you go to different websites, everyone merchandises their websites so differently. Some are so old school, they don't provide as much information to customers as possible. One thing we take pride in is like every single used car, for example, we provide a reconditioning slide of what we did to safety the car. So rather than the customer have to come to this dealership and then find out what got done after the fact, provide all that information up front. It shows you how much the tires are at, how much brakes is at, right? It's like we're full visibility, full transparency, so that when the customer comes to our showroom, there's no surprises. It's like, hey, I already saw this information. This is great. Thank you so much. I just want to drive the car. And as long as it drives well, like we're ready to go, right? So it's like breaking down the barriers to the sale by having a nice, strong presence online, right? Giving that information overload so that, people are equipped with the information up front rather than having to, now let's find out what's going to be, with this car, right? It's like, no, you don't have to worry about that. It's like, it's all online, guys.
How much is also like the brand that's already been made, right? Like Volkswagen's been around for a while.
Yeah, for sure.
The brand itself has been a while. And the general perception of the public towards Volkswagen versus other cars,
For sure.
How much does that play an impact in the amount of cars that you sell? Would you sell more cars if you're at a different dealership just because what they've created over 10 plus years?
I mean, your environment, like even like climate makes a difference too, right? Like if you think about Canada, you even think about Manitoba and Winnipeg, like it's a very heavy truck market, right? So we compete with, just in general, with people who want trucks because we live in, minus 40 weather with dumps of snow, right? And so we may not sell as many Volkswagens maybe as a different province or a different country just because of that, right? And it's like one thing to be a Volkswagen dealership, but when I have 2 other Volkswagen dealerships, then it's why us, right? So it's like I'm also competing for the same piece of that pie of the brand.
Fair.
Right, and so that becomes tough too, because it's like everyone makes a good product these days. Like I have nothing bad to say about different manufacturers. Hyundai makes a good product, Honda makes a good product, all the luxury companies, BMW, Mercedes, Audi, they all make good products, right? Everyone makes a good product. But now if I tie back to what I said, why people do business, it's because of people. Right, and so if a dealership doesn't have a good culture, customers will sniff it right away, right? If people don't build trust right away with these customers, they'll sniff it right away, right? And that's why then the point 2 comes in place, because if the first dealership visit was not to that par or expectation of being a people-oriented business, then the next dealership visit will be.
So Sunny, if you were to walk away from this podcast, is there anything that we haven't touched on, or is there anything that you would like to touch on today?
I think the biggest thing is that as whatever intentions you put out into the universe, like again, I brought it up, I'm a spiritual person. You don't have to be spiritual, but whatever it is, just put intentions out there. It's like a tree, right? The best time to plant a tree was 15 years ago, but the next best time to plant a tree is today, right? And so, never think it's too late to what you want to get done in life. All I can say is if you didn't plant your tree yet, like you got to plant it now. And don't expect it to be there overnight. It takes time for a tree to grow, but do your action, which is the sunlight and the water and the nurturing of the tree, right? Nurturing is important too. Like there's a saying they say with plants, even if you like talk positive to a plant, it will actually grow better. 100%. It'll be healthier,
100%.
right? And that's the self-care that's involved with us, right? We got to be peaceful with ourselves. We have to appreciate ourselves, not be so hard on ourselves, right? But also put the action of like, I need to come to work every single day to work, right? I need to be in right company, right? And that's the sunlight and the water that you're doing to plant yourself.
I told my 4-year-old cousin that they should talk to their plant, and he walked around the house showing it every single window. He was like, here, look at this. Yeah. So I understand what you're saying, especially the metaphor of building something, right? Yeah. And sometimes it can be really hard to put that seed in the ground. To even continue watering. You'll water it for a week. You'll water it for a month. Yeah. Maybe even a year. Yeah. But you may not see something for a very, very long time. Yeah. And that's what I think a lot of people, myself included too, struggle with a little bit.
Yeah. And there's another thing too, right? Like if you go to an airport and you just jump on a random plane, right? And you land in a random country, you can't be disappointed with why you didn't go to where you were hoping to be, right? But if you buy the ticket to go to India, for example, you know you're going to land in India, right? So there's two things you can do in life. Either anywhere you're at in life, you have to be happy with because you didn't buy the ticket to where you want to go, or let's buy the ticket to where we want to go and we know where we're going to end up being, and that's the destination, right? And so it's our plane ride to where we want to go, right?
That's beautiful.
So.
You have your own canvas. You just got to paint your own strokes.
100%. Yeah. So.
Any advice you can leave our viewers with, Sunny? If they
have not gotten anywhere already.
If they're not happy with, if they didn't buy that ticket to India.
Yeah, 100%.
Any advice you can leave them with, or whether they want to get into sales, develop that mindset. Is there anything that you can share?
All I can say is, it's never too late, right? Reach out to people that you find aspirational to you. Like reach out to them and do it nice and early, because that'll help grow your mindset just in alone. You'll be exposed to ways of thinking that you never thought were possible. Read books is very important. They say about books also is, this is someone's life poured 10, 15, 20 years of life experience. Mm-hmm. If you read like a blog or an article, someone created that maybe within a couple of days or a week.
ChatGPT.
Right? Yeah, exactly, right? But a book is like someone's life poured into it, right?
Yeah, exactly.
And so that will help you. It's almost a shortcut to the recipe of success. Yep. Someone's told you all the things they had to do to be successful, and you can find that in a book, right? Yeah. Mm-hmm. And so, it's, plant that tree today, right? Yeah. Don't wait for tomorrow. Don't wait for a year. You can be successful as long as you start today. Mm-hmm. And that would be my biggest advice to everyone out there.
All right. Well, thank you so much for coming on, Sunny. It's been a pleasure. Thank you guys for watching, viewing, listening. If you haven't already, hit that subscribe button. And if you need a car, check out St. James, a Volkswagen. And until next time, peace.
Thanks, guys.